J.K. Rowling, The Alchemy of Rejection. Welcome back. I am Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and this is The Greats series, where we discuss the greatest minds to ever live and what it means to be intellectually gifted. Every publishing executive who turned J.K. Rowling away believed they were rejecting mediocrity. What they were really rejecting was the opening page of a cultural empire. Before Harry Potter became the best-selling book series in history, before the movies and the theme parks, before the billions of dollars in revenue and the place in global consciousness, Rowling was a single mother on welfare in Edinburgh, scribbling in cafes while her infant daughter napped beside her stroller. 12 publishers said no. A 13th finally said yes. That difference changed not just one life, but the imaginative landscape of an entire generation. The story has been told so often it risks sounding like a cliché, but in the framework of the greats, it carries a sharper lesson. Rejection does not measure talent. Gatekeepers are often blind. And the greatest voices are almost always muted first, not because they lack genius, but because their genius doesn't fit the market's imagination until it is too late to ignore. Rowling's journey illustrates the same trajectory seen across centuries. The mocked, the dismissed, the overlooked. They are the ones who create the worlds we later cannot live without. The precarious beginning. Joanne Rowling was born in 1965 in Yate, England. She was a bookish child, often retreating into fantasy to escape the difficulties of her home life. By her teenage years, she already knew she wanted to be a writer. She wrote stories for her sister, constructed elaborate imaginative worlds, and filled notebooks with characters who lived more vividly on the page than in reality. But imagination, as it so often does, collided with the expectations of practicality. She studied French and classics at Exeter, worked as a secretary and a teacher, and found herself living a life far removed from her childhood dream. The pivotal rupture came in the early 1990s. After the collapse of her first marriage, Rowling was left alone in Edinburgh with her infant daughter Jessica. She was broke, depressed, and surviving on state benefits. She has spoken openly about those years as the darkest of her life, where she considered herself a failure in every dimension: marriage, career, financial stability. And yet, even in that despair, she wrote, "The first chapters of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone were drafted in cafes, written longhand, often with the last of her coins spent on a cup of coffee that bought her an hour of heat and space." 12 doors slammed shut. When she finally submitted her manuscript, the response was dishearteningly predictable. One publisher after another rejected it. The reasons varied: too long, too strange, not marketable enough for children. But beneath the excuses was a common thread no one could see its value. A story about a boy wizard in a boarding school? Hardly the stuff of blockbuster literature. Rowling later said that rejection became almost numbing. She kept the stack of no letters as proof of the process, reminders that even the most famous stories in the world often begin in silence. The 12th rejection might have been the end, had she listened to those voices. But she didn't. The 13th submission went to Bloomsbury, a small publisher in London. An editor's 8-year-old daughter read the first chapter and demanded more. That single act, a child's recognition of magic, tipped the scales. Bloomsbury agreed to publish the book, with a print run of just 500 copies. The explosion. From that tiny launch grew a global phenomenon. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone became Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in the United States, and word of mouth spread like wildfire. By the time the second and third books were released, Rowling was no longer an anonymous welfare mother. She was a literary superstar. The books broke sales records. Midnight release parties filled bookstores with children in wizard robes. The movies amplified the cultural wave, turning Harry, Hermione, and Ron into household names across the globe. What the publishers missed, what 12 consecutive editors could not see, was not just a book, but a world. Rowling had created a mythos, a parallel universe rich enough to sustain 7 novels, 8 blockbuster films, and millions of imaginations. Her genius was not only in the crafting of plot or character, but in the construction of an imaginative refuge that invited readers of all ages to belong. Rejection as Alchemy Rowling's success is often framed as a feel-good story of persistence. But it's more than that. It demonstrates how rejection is not evidence of lack, but evidence of difference. The same institutions that dismissed her manuscript now profit from the structures she created. What was once too strange became the most lucrative story franchise in history. And this is the deeper lesson for the study of genius. When the gatekeepers laugh, when the institutions say no, it is often because they cannot see what the creator sees. Genius looks like absurdity until the market catches up. Criticism and controversy. To understand Rowling as a great, one must also look at the backlash. As her fame grew, so did criticism. Religious groups condemned the Harry Potter series as satanic, accusing it of promoting witchcraft. Critics dismissed her writing style as simplistic. In later years, Rowling's public statements, particularly on social and political issues, sparked widespread debate, leading some to attempt to erase her influence entirely. This, too, follows the pattern. The greater the disruption, the harsher the attempt at suppression. Just as Galileo was attacked for defying the church, and as innovators from Tesla to Musk have been mocked in real time, Rowling's cultural power attracted resistance. Her story is not one of unbroken adoration, but of continued friction between genius and the world that resists it. Beyond the numbers, it is tempting to reduce Rowling's legacy to financial figures. Today, she is worth over $1 billion. She is one of the wealthiest authors in history, and her empire spans books, films, stage productions, and theme parks. But her true legacy is not measured in dollars. It is measured in the millions of children who discovered the joy of reading through her books, in the families who bonded over midnight releases, in the way Muggle and Hogwarts entered common speech. Rowling's contribution lies in imagination as survival. She proved that stories can alter cultural reality. She showed that magic is not the opposite of reality, but its re-enchantment. The pattern of the greats. Rowling's story, when placed against the timeline of the greats, is familiar. Early life of difficulty and marginalization. Mockery and dismissal by institutions, breakthrough through persistence, backlash and controversy, enduring legacy that outlasts critics. Her 12 rejections are not a footnote, they are the crucible. They prove the larger thesis of this book, that genius is almost always dismissed first, mocked second, embraced last. Rowling embodies the Cassandra effect, the ignored truth-teller who only later is acknowledged.